There's a deep hunger that never goes away, no matter how much you read, learn, or meditate. You keep trying to heal and grow, chasing a better version of yourself that always feels just out of reach. But the harder you try, the more you feel a shadow following you. A quiet voice saying something in you is still wrong, still unfinished, still broken. We are taught to believe that this sense of incompleteness is natural, that it is the inevitable sign of an imperfect being on a journey toward perfection. But what if that very belief is the root of the wound? What if the idea that you must be repaired is the very thing that keeps you feeling broken? We have been trained to imagine an ideal self, flawless, serene, unshaken by chaos. Yet such an image is a mirage. It is an invention of a culture obsessed with control, a culture that has misunderstood the nature of being. You did not arrive in this world believing you were flawed. That came later, quietly woven into your thoughts by voices that told you there was a higher standard you must reach. Somewhere along the way, you learned that who you are is not enough. And so began the great project of self-repair. Disciplines, habits, spiritual exercises, all aimed at sculpting the better you. But the truth no one dares to speak aloud is that this ideal self does not exist. It has never existed. The more you chase it, the further you wander from the raw, unpolished reality of who you are. In this pursuit, you divide yourself into two: the stern judge and the judged, the reformer and the one to be reformed. It is a strange war, one half of you commanding the other half to change, and the other half quietly longing for the war to end. This division is not a law of nature. It is a story planted in your mind. It is the great illusion of the Western mind that you are two beings, one of them superior and the other inferior, locked in endless struggle. From early childhood, you were taught to mistrust the untamed parts of yourself. Spontaneity was dressed up as recklessness. Emotion was marked as weakness. Desire was painted as sin. The body had to be restrained, the mind disciplined, the instincts overcome. And so, you came to believe that your most natural expressions were defects to be eliminated. But there is no higher self sitting above you like a puppet master, no perfect inner ruler waiting to take control. This imagined separation between the good you and the bad you is a trick of language, morality, and conditioning. It is a fiction, but one that shapes your entire existence. And so you grow up believing that life is a constant act of correction. Every thought weighed, every emotion examined, every action compared to the impossible vision of perfection. You live under the weight of perpetual self-surveillance, and no matter how much you refine yourself, the ideal slips further away. What remains is the endless hum of anxiety, the quiet ache of inadequacy, the weary knowledge that your own standards are impossible to meet. This is the trap. You think you are working toward peace, but you are really working to maintain the war. You think you are walking toward wholeness, but every step is taken under the banner of rejection. The more you try to fix yourself, the more you confirm the belief that you are broken. The more you try to become someone else, the further you drift from the person you already are. And yet, what if this war could be called off? What if there is nothing to fix? Not because life is without pain, but because your pain is not proof of imperfection. Imagine for a moment that all the things you reject about yourself, your doubts, your moods, your contradictions, are not obstacles to your growth, but the very soil from which you grow. Just as the river does not apologize for its curves, just as the tree does not straighten itself to please the eye, you too are shaped by a pattern deeper than the one your mind can measure. Life is not a machine. It is not an object you can take apart and rearrange. It is a process, a movement, a dance in which you are not the choreographer, but a step in the rhythm. The waves of your emotions, the shifts in your desires, the moments of confusion, these are not errors in the system. They are the system. To reject them is to reject the very flow that sustains you. The suffering you feel does not come from the presence of anger, fear, or sadness, but from the belief that you should not feel them. The true burden is not the emotion itself, but the layer of judgment that sits on top of it. You are not hurt by your confusion. You are hurt by the shame of being confused. You are not weakened by fear. You are weakened by the thought that fear is a sign of weakness. Every act of rejection pushes you further from yourself, and in doing so, deepens the fracture you are trying to heal. There is a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the natural sting of living. It rises and falls, comes and goes. Suffering is what happens when you resist pain, when you wrap it in the belief that it should not exist. Pain flows through you and moves on. Suffering loops endlessly because it is tied to the idea that something is wrong. You are told to resist, to fight, to overcome. And yet the very act of resistance binds you more tightly to the thing you wish to escape. We have been taught to live in opposition to ourselves. We try to edit the chaos, tidy the wildness, smooth out the jagged edges of our humanity. But the chaos is part of the pattern. The jaggedness is part of the design. You do not become whole by cutting pieces away. You do not find peace by silencing half your being. You find it by stepping into the totality of who you are, unguarded, unfiltered, without apology. This is not the easy path. It asks you to let go of the very thing you have been taught to hold on to, the belief that control will save you. You cannot control the waves, and you cannot control the tide. You can only move with them, trust them, let them carry you where they will. This is the truth that unsettles the mind, for the mind believes its safety depends on steering the ship. Yet even now, your body is breathing, your heart is beating, your blood is flowing, without a single command from your thoughts. You are already being carried. The question is whether you will stop fighting the current long enough to feel where it is taking you. The mind has built its kingdom on the promise of control. It whispers that if you could only think more clearly, plan more precisely, discipline yourself more strictly, you could finally find peace. But this promise is a mirage. It keeps you running toward a horizon that moves with every step. The truth is far less comfortable. The more you try to control life, the more life slips through your fingers. The more you tighten your grip, the more you feel it escaping. Control is the great illusion, and it is exhausting. You try to control your thoughts, but they move like clouds, shifting shapes, drifting in and out. You try to control your emotions, but they rise like tides, unpredictable, swelling without warning. You try to control your behavior, your future, even the past, as though sheer willpower could rewrite the fabric of time. And yet, underneath it all, your very existence unfolds without your permission. Your lungs draw breath without consulting you. Your heartbeat keeps its rhythm without your approval. Even the smallest cell in your body follows a wisdom older than thought. You are a living process, not a project. You are not an engineer rebuilding a broken machine. You are the river itself, moving with the landscape, shaping and being shaped. And yet, the mind insists on standing at the helm, as though it could steer a force it barely understands. This arrogance of thought is what keeps you weary. The mind works in fragments, in yes and no, good and bad, right and wrong. It cannot hold the whole of life in its grasp. So it dissects, judges, rearranges, trying to impose order on a reality that is already ordered, in ways too vast for it to comprehend. And here is the irony. The more you try to fix what you feel, the more you disturb it. The mind's interference turns passing discomfort into a permanent companion. Fear becomes a cycle. Anger becomes an identity. Sadness becomes a prison. All because you could not leave them alone long enough to pass through you. To live without this compulsion is not to drift aimlessly, nor is it to give up on responsibility. It is to shift the ground from which you act. Instead of reacting from fear, you respond from presence. Instead of moving because you dislike who you are, you move because life itself is asking you to take a step. You stop policing every moment and start participating in it. Presence is not something you add to your life. It is what is left when you stop running. It is not a practice you master. It is what is revealed when you drop the need to improve. You can taste it in the simplest things, in the way your hands hold a cup, in the way your feet touch the ground, in the quiet awareness that precedes thought. In presence, control is no longer necessary because you are no longer at war with the moment. But the mind is sly. Even when you begin to understand this, it tries to turn surrender into a strategy. Now I will learn to let go, it says. Now I will practice not practicing. And so the old game resumes, dressed in the clothes of wisdom. This is the final trick of control, to disguise itself as its opposite. And this is where most seekers get lost, turning surrender into yet another project, another way to become better. The law of reverse effort reveals itself here. The more you try to float, the more you sink. The more you try to let go, the more you cling to the very idea of letting go. It is like trying to fall asleep by ordering yourself to relax. The command itself keeps you awake. In the same way, the effort to accept yourself only works against acceptance. Real acceptance is not an act of will. It is the absence of will in that moment. It is the point at which you stop arguing with what is. This does not mean you agree with everything or that you do not act to change what can be changed. It means you no longer poison yourself with the belief that what is should not be. And in this absence of resistance, something curious happens. Change begins to unfold on its own. Without your interference, the mind finds its quiet moments. Without your pressure, emotions move like weather, clearing when they're ready. This is the paradox. Transformation happens most deeply when you stop trying to transform. The very act of getting out of the way allows the hidden intelligence of life to work without obstruction. Imagine bamboo growing. No gardener pulls it up to make it taller. No hand forces the leaves to unfold. It grows because it cannot do otherwise. It grows because life moves through it. You are not so different. Your growth does not depend on force, but on space. Space for your nature to express itself without being strangled by judgment. And yet, this space is frightening. Without the structure of constant improvement, who are you? Without the endless checklist of better habits, higher goals, cleaner emotions, what is left? The mind fears the answer because it cannot control it. But beyond that, fear lies the essence of you, raw, unpolished, unapologetic. When you begin to see that nothing is missing, the world starts to look different. The moments you used to dismiss as unproductive reveal their quiet beauty. The emotions you once labeled as negative show their hidden wisdom. Even your so-called flaws become messengers rather than enemies, pointing to where life is asking for attention, not correction. It is not resignation. It is intimacy with the truth of your own existence. You start to see that your most human moments, your hesitation, your longing, your uncertainty, are not signs of failure, but threads in the larger tapestry. And the more you see this, the less need you feel to tear the tapestry apart in search of a better pattern. There is no end point where the work is finished and you stand flawless before yourself. There is only this ongoing dance, step, stumble, step again, each movement as much a part of the music as the next. You do not need to perfect the dance. You only need to hear the music and allow yourself to move. When the war with yourself quiets, you begin to notice the hum of something constant beneath it all, a stillness that has been there from the beginning, waiting for you to stop long enough to hear it. It is not an achievement. It is not a reward for years of discipline. It is what you have carried all along, buried under the noise of your own resistance. And in that stillness, there is no question of being broken or whole, enough or not enough. There is simply the unfolding of what is, life happening through you and as you. The mind will still judge. Old habits will still try to reclaim their territory, but they lose their power when you see them for what they are, passing waves on the surface of something much deeper. When you no longer need to fix yourself, you are free to truly live. You are no longer consumed by the mirror, no longer haunted by the ghost of who you should be. You can meet yourself in the rawness of the present moment and see that you were never the problem to begin with.